Chelsea at the
It's for Chelsea at the movies! Yay!
Yay!
We saw Honey Boy, starring Shia LaBeouf. Wrote this movie,
Yeah.
right? So it's a little bit autobiographical, and it tells a story of a father-son relationship, and most of it takes place when the son is, I don't know, I'm going to say around 10. But we brought into the story because we see the son as an adult in a rehab, and so we're kind of brought into his past of what has happened, throughout his life to kind of, was part of his story of where he's at right now. And so we saw the trailers for this, and the trailers were done really well. The movie looked like it was done in an interesting way, got really good reviews, and so I knew that I definitely wanted to see it. It was limited release, and it just happened that when I checked, it was showing at a theater near us, so we went and saw it. Kelsey, go wait or skip?
I'm going to say wait to see this movie. I feel like this movie was an entertaining movie, an edifying movie even, perhaps. A good movie, an interesting, well-done movie. But I feel ultimately this movie was created for the small screen by Amazon Studios. I feel like it was more like a really, really good thing that maybe you saw on HBO or Netflix or something like that. And it didn't really warrant a theatrical release.
Okay, I'm also going to say wait. I do not agree about, I feel like this movie was up to par with other theatrical releases. So I didn't get that same feeling. The reason why I say wait is because
You think I'm biased against Amazon?
I think you are, because you keep saying Amazon.
It's very possible.
But for me, this movie was, I don't know that it's going to be everybody's cup of tea. It was very raw, it was very honest, and I think some people might watch it and be like...
Yeah. How about this? Caveat, if you're in the recovery community, go see this movie.
Right,
I enjoyed it, and I understood it, but I feel like...
It was really
just telling
good.
anybody to go see it, you might be like,
but
what is this?
I don't know that it's for the masses, but I do think it was really, really good. And
I do too.
For Shia LaBeouf, if that's how you say his name, I don't know.
It also might be Shia LaBeouf.
It's definitely not that.
Shia LaBeouf.
It was really raw and honest, and it wasn't a typical, and there's nothing wrong. So we just saw recently Jojo Rabbit. I think that is one of the best movies. It clearly had a beginning, middle, end. It had an arc for the protagonist. It was very clear. This movie was less so. It was less clear in what it was doing, but because its purpose was to be raw and honest, so it was different in that way. I thought he did a really excellent job, especially considering that was autobiographical. Spoilers!
Transformer edition. Remember, because he was in Transformers movie, which was terrible.
And now
all those movies.
But he's transformed now.
Now he's also in the Peanut Butter Falcon, another good movie.
Yes, really good movie. So this movie, like we said, it started I don't know, with a guy kind of. He's involved in acting, but he also looks like he's a stuntman kind of thing. It's kind of hard to tell.
From the trailers and from the movie itself, I didn't realize that this movie, because I didn't know it was based on, I didn't know he wrote it.
So I
thought he was a stuntman until I was like, why do they keep showing these scenes where he would clearly, his face would be in the scene? Right,
that he wouldn't be, but he's always involved in some stuff that you expect stuntmen to be involved, but he's the actor. Anyway, you can see that his life is a little bit
chaotic,
out of control.
Yeah.
He ends up getting into a wreck. He was drunk, and then we see him at a rehab. And really, what starts the movie is that the counselor is and says to him PTSD.
Yeah.
And then he responds, he's like, PTSD,
which stands for post-traumatic stress disorder.
Yeah, and he's like, what do you mean? Because
why would I have PTSD?
Right, because a lot of people would make up a story that that's something, soldiers have, but not just he's an actor, you know what I mean? And then you get taken back to his childhood, and you kind of see how, I guess what the movie's telling you is that, you can have PTSD from a...
it's post-traumatic stress disorder.
Yeah.
So he had a very traumatic childhood.
But, his childhood, I would guess... because this is what I think, didn't seem super traumatic. it was like his childhood was the same over a long period of time, but yet there was trauma there and
Yeah.
stress.
To me, it
and
seemed pretty traumatic. And I identified a lot with the character in that I also had a traumatic childhood and a similarly complicated relationship with my father. And so I saw a lot. Like, to me, I was like, yeah, trauma. You know what I mean? Like, I experienced a lot of trauma in my life. And I could see, like, yeah, PTSD is real. You know what I mean? Like, this is something that...
I guess for me, what I identified with is that in my own life, I picked up on some similarities between like his childhood and my childhood, and just how the relationships between people were. I definitely had a very different childhood than he did, but something that I've often told myself is like, oh, well, it wasn't like trauma, Rachel. It wasn't
Right.
like this, Rachel.
Well,
so that's kind of how I see it for the guy when he's standing in front of his therapist and he's like, PTSD, what do you mean? Because for him, this was all normal and this was all the
Exactly.
same over a long period of time.
just because something is your normal doesn't mean that it can't be traumatic.
And that you won't have
There's plenty
like
of normal people that are stuck in very traumatic situations or just functional situations that to them it's just normal. But I think as you learn and grow and see what life is and can be, some of the stuff I still think about today, I was thinking about outside today in relation to this movie. I thought of some events that happened in my life. And I was like, oh, well, yeah, that's crazy. Like I said them out loud. And then I was like, that's a crazy thing that happened that I never really accepted as like nuts until right now when I thought about it outside of the context of my own experience. If I just thought of it as like, if somebody told me a story about John Doe and this, I'd be like, yeah, that's crazy, you know?
Right, yeah.
So.
Yeah, and I'm sure, like, when you watch this movie, there were parts of it where I would, like, it made me really uncomfortable what the 10-year-old, was going through. But from his perspective, like, this was his life, So it was just really good, and what I saw it as is I saw it, like, as a really raw and honest movie. There are scenes and parts of this movie that made me uncomfortable, and I think about, like, him making this, and it's his life.
Vulnerable. I've
Very
never felt
vulnerable, yeah.
more love or closer to Shia LaBeouf than after seeing this movie. So I'm really glad he made it. I'm really glad he wrote it and created it because I think it's an important movie.
But he didn't like hold back in the things that were uncomfortable. He could have said, well, I'm not going to put that in the movie. But like he put it in there, but without any judgment around it, without any trying to lead the audience anywhere. He just put it there and just let it be what it was. And what I thought that I observed, the story I make up, is that through like this movie, I saw somebody who learned about themselves and what had happened, learned to like love themselves, but also like forgave their father.
Yeah.
While also recognizing the things that his part in like a lot of the events and how they were abusive or they were traumatic or unloving, all this stuff, he didn't, because forgiving somebody doesn't mean, oh, you let them off the hook for all this. Like, we don't have the hook. Like, we don't have anybody on a hook, and that's not the point. The point is like, yeah, this happened.
Right.
My father was hurt. I was hurt.
Yeah.
And now, like, I'm responsible for me, and I can, like, move
as you
forward.
talk,
and
I'm like, gosh, maybe I should have said go see this movie, because I really think that the message of this movie, and it was beyond the message, it was a well done movie. I thought the characters were great in it. I thought the performances were really good. I thought it was shot in an interesting and artful way, and so I really enjoyed it. And on top of that, all the recovery stuff and all the truths in recovery, the truths we find in recovery, were there in this movie.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes the truth is hard. And sometimes the truth includes things like, well, I have to accept this as what it was or is. But at the same time, I'm responsible for me. And so how do I live my best life and do those two things at once? Too often we want to just do one or the other. And I thought that this movie really showed how that can play out and how it probably, I guess, played out in Shia LaBeouf's life. And I think it's really great. And so I even thought, like, oh, well, they'll show this movie at places in recovery, like for years probably, because I thought it was
Well,
a
they
really
could.
good.
I will say this, like, the reason why I chose Wait is because I think not everybody is maybe in a place where they want to see a movie like this, even though it's really good and it's really edifying and has global truths in it that I think apply to everybody. Not everybody's interested in that, you know? And I get that. Like, that's not where you're at. The other thing is, if you are on a recovery journey, if you are looking back at your childhood and there's trauma or anything like that, I wonder if this movie might be a little triggering.
Because it was for me.
You might leave the movie and have a lot of feelings.
And maybe you're bringing in your personal experience into this because that's what happened.
Correct. I did have a personal experience where I went and saw this movie with somebody and it was triggering for them.
But I didn't know it was triggering. Okay? I was just like, why are you attacking me, Rachel, for asking me my thoughts about this movie? And she was like, what?
And it was interesting to leave the movie, and then I observed that, like, Kelsey had been triggered and he was in some old behaviors. But what was good for me was that I didn't take it personal. I went, oh, this is Kelsey's thing. And then I wasn't like wrecked by that, or like I didn't feel bad or whatever. I completely understood that this was Kelsey's thing to deal with. Anyway, back to saying, if you are going through something, I think you should know that going into this movie because it's raw and honest. A movie, you know, there's other movies.
Is this our first trigger warning? Trigger warning.
There's other movies out there that are going to give you the beginning, middle, and end, and the character is going to have like some peace at the end. This did have that, but man, when he shows you like what the kid goes through and all that, it is very present and it's very honest, and it's gonna feel like kind of like sometimes, like kind of abrasive, you know, and brutal at times. It's just the way that he did that, and that's where the art comes in into the movie making, because nothing was super like over the top, you know. We saw him hit his son one time and he slapped him twice. The whole rest of the movie, I mean, the father is abusive, but it's not like I sat there and watched somebody like beat down a 10-year-old. It wasn't like that, but the honesty of what happened, and sometimes traumas like this, gosh, it was really real. I mean, like an example was the exchange where he's talking to his mom on the phone, and then his dad's standing there and he's like, you know, kind of mouthing off because like he has anger towards his ex-wife. Well, then his mom's like, just repeat what I say. So now you have the kid repeating what his mom says to her ex-husband, and then ex-husband, and he's the go-between. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is completely inappropriate for a child.
It's trauma. It's
trauma. But it was very like, that just hit me like all inside. So it might be triggering for people watching it.
What also might be triggering for you is my voice just doesn't sound right today, Rachel. I wanted to use that voice right here, right now to say, please like, comment, and subscribe to Chelsea at the Movies.
Don't let the use of his voice go to waste.
Yeah, don't let this be for nothing, guys. Please. Please.